The dust cloud rose like a curtain of death against the burning afternoon sky, and Logan Wright knew before his horse even crested the ridge that someone was in terrible trouble down in that ravine. The sound reached him next, a desperate screaming of horses mixed with the splintering of wood and the terrified cry of a woman that cut through the September heat like a knife through butter. He dug his heels into his mare's flanks without thinking, his heart already pounding as he charged down the rocky slope toward the overturned wagon that lay like a broken toy at the bottom of the gulch. The scene before him was chaos. Two horses thrashed in their traces, their eyes rolling white with panic as they struggled against the weight of the wagon that had gone over the edge. The whole thing had flipped, the contents spilling across the dusty ground, and there, pinned partially beneath the driver's seat, was a woman in a blue dress, her dark hair spilling free from its pins as she fought to pull herself out from under the wreckage. Logan was off his horse before it had even fully stopped, his boots hitting the ground hard as he ran toward her. He could see blood on her temple, see the way her face had gone pale with shock and pain, and something in his chest twisted tight at the sight of her struggling there alone. "Hold still," he called out, his voice rough from days of riding in silence. "Just hold still. I'm coming." Her eyes found his, wide and green as spring grass, and in that moment when their gazes locked, Logan felt something shift inside him that he couldn't name. It was like looking into a mirror and seeing not his own reflection, but something he had been searching for his entire life without even knowing he was looking. He reached the wagon and assessed the situation quickly. The seat had her trapped across her legs, but the main body of the wagon was propped at an angle by a large rock, keeping the full weight off her. Still, one wrong move could send the whole thing crashing down. "What's your name?" he asked, already moving to brace his shoulder against the wagon's side. "Molly," she gasped, her voice tight with pain. "Molly Anderson." "Well, Molly Anderson, I'm Logan Wright, and I'm going to get you out of here. When I lift, you pull yourself backward. Don't try to stand, just drag yourself clear. You understand?" She nodded, her jaw set with determination even though he could see tears tracking through the dust on her cheeks. He liked that about her immediately, that strength in the face of fear. "On 3, he said, positioning himself. 1, 2, 3. Logan heaved upward with all his strength, his muscles straining as the wagon groaned and lifted. Molly pulled herself backward, her hands scrabbling at the rocky ground, her face contorted with effort and pain. For a terrible moment, Logan thought he might not be able to hold it, that the weight would crush him and her both, but then she was clear, rolling away from the wreckage just as his strength gave out and the wagon crashed back down with a sound like thunder. He stumbled back, breathing hard, and went to her immediately. She was sitting now, her hands shaking as she tried to assess her own injuries. Her dress was torn and dusty, and he could see abrasions on her palms where she had tried to catch herself during the accident. The cut on her temple was bleeding, but not badly. Her legs were what concerned him most. "Can you move your feet?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Molly tried, wincing but nodding. "Yes, I think nothing is broken, just bruised badly." Logan pulled his canteen from his belt and offered it to her. She took it with trembling hands and drank deeply, some of the color returning to her face. Up close, he could see she was young, probably around 25, with delicate features and a dusting of freckles across her nose that the sun had brought out. There was something in her eyes, though, a sadness that seemed older than her years, and he found himself wanting to know everything about her. "What happened?" he asked gently. "The wheel hit a rut," she said, her voice still shaky. "I was coming from Prescott, heading to Taylor. My uncle has a ranch there. The horses spooked at a rattlesnake, and when they bolted, the wheel caught and the whole thing just went over." She looked at the ruined wagon, at the scattered remains of her belongings, and fresh tears welled in her eyes. Everything I own in the world was in that wagon. Logan looked at the wreckage and felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. He barely knew this woman, had just met her moments ago, but something in him had already decided that he would help her, that he would make sure she was safe. "Where were you heading exactly?" he asked. "What's your uncle's name?" "Henry Anderson. He has a cattle ranch about 5 miles south of Taylor. He wrote to me 3 months ago after my father died. Said he could use help running the household and that I would have a place with him." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of dirt across her cheek. "He's the only family I have left now." Taylor was in Arizona territory, not far from where they were now, maybe 2 days' ride. Logan had been heading that direction himself, drifting as he had been for the past 2 years since he had left his own family's ranch in Texas. He had been running from memories, from the ghost of the woman who had chosen someone else, from the feeling of being trapped in a life that didn't fit him anymore. But looking at Molly now, bruised and frightened but not broken, he felt something stir in him that had been dormant for a long time. "I know Henry Anderson," Logan said, making a decision. "Good man. I've done some work for him in the past. I was heading toward Taylor myself. I'll get you there safely." Molly looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw relief mixed with wariness. "I don't want to be a burden. If you could just help me get to the next town, I can find another way." "The next town is Taylor," Logan said firmly, "and even if it wasn't, I wouldn't leave you out here alone. The desert isn't kind to anyone, especially not to someone injured." He stood and offered her his hand. "Come on. Let's see if you can stand." She took his hand and he pulled her carefully to her feet. She swayed immediately and he caught her around the waist, steadying her. She was taller than he had expected, her head coming to his shoulder, and he could smell lavender in her hair despite the dust and the blood. She tried to put weight on her left leg and gasped, nearly collapsing. "Easy," Logan said, holding her securely. "Looks like that leg took more damage than you thought." "I can ride," Molly insisted, her pride clearly fighting with her pain. "I won't slow you down." Logan almost smiled at that. Here she was, barely able to stand, and she was worried about inconveniencing him. "You'll ride with me," he said. "My mare can handle both of us for a couple of days. But first, let's see what we can salvage from your wagon and tend to that cut on your head." He helped her sit back down on a relatively flat rock, then went to examine the wreckage. The horses had finally calmed, though they were still trembling. He cut them free from the traces carefully, checking them over for injuries. They seemed sound enough, just frightened. He could sell them in Taylor and give Molly the money, or perhaps her uncle would want them. The wagon itself was a total loss, its axle broken and its frame splintered. But scattered among the rocks and sage were Molly's belongings, and Logan gathered them carefully. There were dresses, carefully folded but now dusty and torn. A small trunk with a broken lock that held some books, a Bible, and what looked like letters tied with a ribbon. A photograph in a cracked frame showing a stern-looking man who must have been her father. He gathered everything he could find, his respect for her growing as he saw how few possessions she actually had. She had said everything she owned was in the wagon, and she had meant it literally. He found a bag that was still intact and packed what he could salvage into it, then returned to Molly with his saddlebag. From it, he pulled out a clean cloth and wet it with water from his canteen. "This might sting," he warned, kneeling in front of her again. Molly sat very still as he cleaned the cut on her temple, her eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that made him self-conscious. He was aware suddenly of how rough he must look after weeks on the trail, his dark hair too long, his jaw covered in stubble, his clothes dusty and worn. He had not cared much about his appearance in a long time, but he found himself caring now under her steady gaze. "You have kind eyes," Molly said suddenly, softly. "When you looked at me when you first came down the slope, I saw it. Kindness. I knew I would be safe." Logan's hand stilled for a moment. No one had called him kind in a very long time. Most people saw him as quiet, distant, a drifter who never stayed long enough to form attachments. He had built walls around himself after Catherine had broken his heart, had told himself he preferred being alone. But there was something about Molly, something in the way she looked at him, that made those walls feel suddenly insubstantial. "I'm just doing what anyone would do," he said gruffly, finishing with the cut and tying the cloth around her head to keep it clean. "No," Molly said, and there was certainty in her voice. "Not everyone. I've learned that the hard way." There was a story there Logan could tell, layers of hurt beneath her words. He wanted to ask, wanted to know what had put that sadness in her eyes, but they had just met. Instead, he stood and offered his hand again. "Can you tell me about your uncle's ranch?" he asked as he helped her limp toward his horse. "How long since you've seen him?" "I've never met him," Molly admitted. "My father and he had a falling out before I was born. Some disagreement about the family business. My father never spoke of him, but when he was dying, he told me to write to Uncle Henry if I ever needed help. So I did, and Uncle Henry responded right away. He seemed genuinely glad to hear from me." Logan helped her into the saddle, then swung up behind her. She was stiff at first, uncomfortable with the intimacy of riding pressed against a stranger, but there was no other choice. He kept his touch respectful, one arm around her waist to steady her, and clicked his tongue to get the mare moving. "Henry's a good man," Logan said as they started up the slope, the two freed horses trailing behind on a lead rope he had fashioned. "Lost his wife about 5 years back. No children. He's been running that ranch mostly alone with just a couple of hired hands. I worked for him for a few months last year, helping with a difficult calving season. He's fair, honest. You'll be well taken care of there." He felt Molly relax slightly against him. "That's good to know." "I was nervous, I admit, going to live with a stranger, even family, but I had nowhere else to go." "What about your father? What did he do?" "He was a teacher," Molly said, and Logan could hear both love and sorrow in her voice. "In Prescott. We had a small house near the school. He taught me everything, made sure I had an education as good as any boy's. He believed women should be educated, should be able to think for themselves. It made him unpopular with some people." "Smart man," Logan said. "Yes, but it meant we were always outsiders. And when he got sick last winter, there was no one to help. The consumption took him slowly. By the end, all our savings were gone on doctors and medicine. When he died, the school board wanted the house back. I had nothing left, nowhere to go." That's when I remembered what he had said about Uncle Henry. Logan felt her tremble, not from cold but from the weight of her grief, and he tightened his arm around her slightly, offering what comfort he could. "I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you." Her voice was small now. "He was a good father. The best. I miss him terribly." They rode in silence for a while after that, the afternoon sun beating down on them as they crossed the high desert terrain. The landscape around them was harsh but beautiful, all red rocks and scattered sage, distant mountains purple against the sky. Logan had always loved this country, the wildness of it, the way it made him feel both small and free at the same time. He was acutely aware of Molly in his arms, of the way she fit against him, of the trust she was placing in him by allowing this closeness. He could feel her breathing, feel the way she occasionally flinched when the horse's gait jostled her injured leg. Every time she did, he wanted to stop, to check on her, to somehow take her pain away. This was dangerous, Logan thought, this feeling growing in his chest. He had known her for less than an hour, and already she was affecting him in ways that frightened him. He had sworn after Catherine that he would never open himself up to that kind of hurt again. Love was a weakness, a liability. It was better to stay alone, to keep moving, to never let anyone close enough to wound him. But Molly was already close, pressed against his heart, and he found he didn't want to push her away. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Logan started looking for a place to make camp. They had covered good ground, but Taylor was still a day and a half away, and Molly needed rest. He found a spot with an overhang that would provide some shelter, near a small spring that trickled from the rocks. He helped Molly down carefully, noting how her face had gone pale again, how she was biting her lip against the pain. She tried to help as he unsaddled the horse and set up their camp, but he waved her away gently. "You need to rest that leg," he said. "Let me take care of this." Molly settled on a flat rock, watching him work. Logan was efficient, economical in his movements. He had been on his own for a long time and knew how to make camp quickly. He gathered wood for a fire, pulled out the supplies from his saddlebag, set water to boil in his small pot. He had dried beef, beans, and some coffee. Not much, but it would do. As the fire crackled to life and the stars began to appear overhead, Logan found himself stealing glances at Molly. The firelight played across her face, highlighting the delicate line of her jaw, the way her hair fell in dark waves around her shoulders now that it had come completely free from its pins. She caught him looking once and smiled, a small, shy smile that made his heart do something strange in his chest. "Tell me about yourself," Molly said as Logan handed her a tin plate with food. "You know so much about me now, but I know nothing about you except your name and that you're kind to strangers in trouble." Logan settled across the fire from her, his own plate in hand. He was quiet for a long moment, wondering how much to say. He was not used to talking about himself, had spent so long avoiding real conversations. But there was something about Molly that made him want to open up, to let her see past the walls he had built. "I grew up in Texas," he began slowly, "on a ranch my father built from nothing. I have 2 brothers, both older. They were always the ones who were good at ranching, good at business. I was the one who wanted to read books, who would rather ride out alone than deal with cattle. My father never understood me. Did you leave because of that?" Molly asked gently. "Partly. But mostly I left because of a woman." The words were hard to say even now. "Her name was Catherine. I loved her, or thought I did. Asked her to marry me. She said yes, and I thought my life was finally falling into place. But then my brother Daniel came home from the war, decorated and handsome and full of stories. Catherine took one look at him and changed her mind about everything. Married him 3 months later." Molly drew in a sharp breath. "Oh, Logan, I'm so sorry." Logan shrugged, trying to make it seem like it didn't matter, but his voice betrayed him. "That was 2 years ago. I couldn't stay and watch them together, watch her look at him the way I had thought she looked at me, so I left. I've been drifting ever since, taking jobs where I can find them, never staying long. It's a lonely life, but at least no one can hurt me." "But you're hurting anyway," Molly said softly. "Loneliness is its own kind of hurt." Logan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw understanding in her eyes. She knew. She knew what it was like to be alone, to have lost people, to be carrying around wounds that didn't show on the outside. "What about you?" he asked. "Was there ever someone for you?" Molly was quiet for a moment, stirring her food without eating. "There was a man," she said finally. "A banker's son in Prescott. He courted me for months, said all the right things. I thought he meant them. But when my father got sick, when it became clear that I would have no inheritance, nothing to bring to a marriage, he disappeared. just stopped calling. I saw him 6 months later walking with another girl, the daughter of the mayor. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed." "He was a fool," Logan said, and he meant it. Molly looked up at him, and even across the fire he could see the shimmer of tears in her eyes. "That's what my father said. He told me I deserved better, someone who would love me for myself and not for what I could bring them. I'm beginning to think men like that don't exist." "They do," Logan said firmly. "You just haven't found the right one yet." Something passed between them then, a moment of connection that felt almost tangible in the firelit darkness. Logan felt his heart beating faster, felt the pull toward her growing stronger. This was more than just attraction, more than just sympathy for someone in trouble. When he had pulled her from that wagon, when their eyes had met, something had shifted in him. He had seen her, really seen her, in a way he had never seen anyone before. It was like she was a missing piece he hadn't known he was looking for. They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing easily between them. Molly told him about her childhood, about the books she loved to read, about her father's passion for education, and how he had instilled in her a love of learning. Logan found himself telling her things he had never told anyone, about his dreams of having his own small ranch someday, nothing grand like his father's, but a place that was his own where he could raise horses and live quietly. "Why haven't you done it?" Molly asked. Logan poked at the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise into the night sky. "Fear, I suppose. Fear of putting down roots and having them torn up again. Fear of wanting something and losing it. It's easier to keep moving." "But it's not really living," Molly said. "My father used to say that we can't let fear rob us of joy, that sometimes we have to take the risk, even if it might hurt, because the alternative is never really living at all." "Your father sounds like he was a wise man." "He was." Molly smiled sadly. "I wish you could have met him. I think he would have liked you." Eventually, exhaustion caught up with them both. Logan gave Molly his bedroll and saddle blanket, insisting she take them despite her protests. He would keep watch anyway, he told her, make sure no predators wandered into camp. The truth was, he was too restless to sleep, his mind too full of thoughts of her. He sat by the fire and watched her sleep, the way the flames cast dancing shadows across her face. She looked peaceful now, the pain eased by rest, and he found himself imagining what it would be like to see her face every morning, to have the right to hold her and comfort her, to build a life with her. He was in trouble, Logan realized. Deep trouble. He was falling for her, and he had known her for less than a day. It was madness. It went against everything he had told himself about staying alone and protecting his heart. But as he sat there in the darkness with her sleeping nearby, he couldn't bring himself to regret finding her, to wish he had ridden a different path that day. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Molly woke to find Logan already up, coffee brewing and breakfast cooking. Her leg was stiff and painful, but the swelling had gone down somewhat. Logan checked the bandage on her head, pleased to see that the cut was already starting to heal. They ate quickly and set off again, settling into the rhythm of riding together. Molly was less tense today, more comfortable pressed against Logan's chest. They talked as they rode, sharing more stories, and Logan found himself laughing for the first time in months at something she said about a student who had tried to bring a frog to school and lost it in the middle of one of her father's lessons. Around midday, they encountered a small group of travelers heading in the opposite direction. Logan tensed slightly, his hand moving instinctively to the gun at his hip. The Arizona territory could be dangerous, full of outlaws and men with no scruples. But these travelers were just a family, a man and woman with 3 small children in a covered wagon, looking tired but friendly. They stopped to exchange news. The family was heading to California, hoping for a better life. Logan shared what water he could spare, and the woman gave them some fresh bread she had baked that morning. As they parted ways, the woman touched Molly's hand. "You take care of that leg," she said kindly. "And you take care of her," she added to Logan. "She's a special one, I can tell." "Yes, madam," Logan said. "I intend to." After they had ridden on, Molly was quiet for a while. Then she said, "They thought we were married. I know, you didn't correct them." Logan was silent for a moment. "No, I didn't. Would you have preferred I did?" "No," Molly said softly. "It felt nice, actually, to have someone assume I belonged to someone, that I had a place in the world." Logan tightened his arm around her waist slightly. "You do have a place, with your uncle." "Yes," Molly agreed, but there was something in her voice that suggested she was thinking about more than just her uncle's ranch. That night they made camp again, this time in a small canyon with walls that glowed red in the sunset. They were only a few hours from Taylor now. By tomorrow afternoon they would arrive, and Logan would deliver Molly safely to her uncle, and that would be the end of it. The thought made something ache in Logan's chest. After they had eaten, Molly asked if she could look at the things he had salvaged from her wagon. Logan brought over the bag, and she went through it slowly, her face a mixture of emotions as she examined each item. She lingered over the photograph of her father, her fingers tracing the crack in the glass. "I'm grateful you saved these," she said. "They're all I have left of my old life." "You're starting a new life now," Logan said, sitting beside her. "With your uncle, it will be good." "Will it?" Molly looked at him, and in the fading light her eyes were luminous. "Logan, can I tell you something? Something I haven't told anyone, of course." "I'm frightened," she admitted. "Terrified, actually. I'm going to live with a man I've never met in a place I've never been. I'll be dependent on his charity, his goodwill. I have no money, no prospects, nowhere else to go if it doesn't work out. I'm trying to be brave, but the truth is, I'm scared of what my life is going to be." Logan reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. It was a bold move, probably too bold given how recently they had met, but he couldn't help himself. "You're one of the bravest people I've ever met," he said. "You've lost everything and you're still moving forward, still trying. That takes real courage. I don't feel brave. The bravest people never do." He squeezed her hand gently. "And you won't be alone. Henry will take good care of you, I promise, and I'll be around too. I was planning to look for work in Taylor anyway. I'll check in, make sure you're settling in well." Molly looked down at their joined hands, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Would you really? I would like that. I would like it very much." Then it's settled. Logan felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he hadn't even realized he was carrying. He wasn't ready to say goodbye to her either. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They sat there as the stars came out, hands still clasped, talking quietly. Logan told her more about Henry's ranch, about the land around Taylor, about the mountains in the distance where wild horses still ran free. Molly listened, asking questions, and Logan realized she was trying to picture her new life, trying to prepare herself for it. "Will you tell me more about your dreams?" Molly asked suddenly. "About the ranch you want to have someday." Logan was surprised by the question. No one had ever asked him about his dreams before. Catherine had dismissed them, his father had mocked them, his brothers had simply not cared. But Molly was looking at him with genuine interest, as if what he wanted actually mattered. "It wouldn't be much," he said slowly. "Maybe 100 acres, somewhere with good water and grass. I'd breed horses, train them properly. Not break them like most people do, but train them with patience and understanding. I've always felt like I understood horses better than people. They're honest. If you treat them well, they'll do anything for you." "That sounds wonderful," Molly said. Do you have a place in mind? I've seen a few parcels of land around here that would be perfect. There's one in particular about 10 miles from Taylor. Beautiful valley with a creek running through it. Rich grass, sheltered from the worst winds. I've thought about it a lot, dreamed about it. But it takes money to buy land, to build a house and barns, to buy breeding stock. I've been saving what I can from the jobs I take, but it's slow going. How long have you been saving? 2 years. I have about half of what I need. Molly was quiet for a moment. 2 years is a long time to work toward a dream alone. It is, Logan admitted. Sometimes I wonder if I'm fooling myself, if I should just give up and go back to Texas, take my place on my father's ranch like he always wanted. At least then I'd have a home, even if it never felt like mine. Don't do that, Molly said fiercely. Don't give up on your dream. You deserve to have the life you want, Logan. You deserve to be happy. The conviction in her voice touched him deeply. So do you, he said, looking at her intently. You deserve more than just being someone's household help, Molly. You deserve to have dreams of your own. I used to have dreams, Molly said softly. When I was younger, I dreamed of being a teacher like my father, of having my own schoolhouse, my own students, of making a difference in children's lives the way he did. But then he got sick, and reality set in. Women can't just do those things, not really, not without a husband or family to support them. Maybe you could still do it, Logan suggested. Maybe your uncle would help you once you're settled. Taylor could use a good teacher. Molly smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Maybe. I'll see what life brings. That night, as Logan kept watch again and listened to Molly's quiet breathing, he found himself imagining impossible things. He imagined his ranch with Molly in it, imagined her teaching the local children while he trained horses, imagined them building a life together. It was a beautiful dream, but that's all it was. A dream. Molly was going to her uncle's ranch, and he was just the man who had pulled her from a wrecked wagon. She was grateful to him, but gratitude wasn't love. Still, when morning came and they set off on the final leg of their journey, Logan couldn't help but feel a sense of dread growing in his chest. In a few hours, this would be over. He would say goodbye, and Molly would begin her new life, and he would go back to drifting alone. The thought of it made him feel emptier than he had felt in a long time. They reached the outskirts of Taylor just after noon. The town was small but growing, with a main street that boasted a general store, a saloon, a hotel, and a few other businesses. People moved about their daily business, cowboys and families and merchants. It looked peaceful, prosperous even. A good place for a fresh start. Henry Anderson's ranch was south of town, just as Molly had said. They rode in silence, both aware that their time together was running out. Logan could feel Molly's tension growing, could sense her nervousness about meeting her uncle for the first time. The ranch, when they reached it, was impressive. A large main house built of adobe and wood, surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals with good horses, cattle grazing on the surrounding land. It was clear Henry had done well for himself. They had barely dismounted when a man emerged from the house. He was in his 50s, tall and lean with graying hair and a weathered face. When he saw Molly, his expression transformed into one of surprised joy. "Molly," he called out, striding toward them. "Is that you? We weren't expecting you for another week at least." "Uncle Henry," Molly said, and Logan heard the nervousness in her voice. "I'm sorry to arrive unexpectedly. There was an accident with my wagon." Henry's eyes went to the bandage on her head, then to Logan. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Logan spoke up. "Her wagon went over in a ravine about 2 days' ride from here, sir. I happened upon the accident and brought her here myself. She's got some bruises and a sprained leg, but nothing serious. She was lucky." Henry's face had gone serious. "Come inside, both of you." Let's get you properly looked at, Molly, and you can tell me everything." He turned to Logan, extending his hand. "I'm Henry Anderson. I'm deeply grateful to you for helping my niece." Logan shook his hand. "Logan Wright, sir. We've met before. I worked your ranch last year during calving season." Recognition dawned in Henry's eyes. "Right? Yes, of course. Good man, hard worker. I tried to convince you to stay on permanently, as I recall." "You did, sir, but I wasn't ready to settle at the time." Henry studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Well, you're here now, and you've done me a service I can never fully repay. Come in, let me offer you a meal at least. I want to hear the full story." Inside, the house was spacious and comfortable, if somewhat neglected in its decoration. It was clear a woman's touch had been missing for some time. Henry called for his housekeeper, an older Mexican woman named Rosa, who fussed over Molly immediately, taking her to a room to clean up and tend to her injuries properly. Logan found himself sitting in Henry's study, accepting a glass of whiskey and answering questions about exactly what had happened. Henry listened intently, his expression growing more concerned as Logan described the state of the wagon and how close Molly had come to serious injury. "She's lucky you came along when you did," Henry said when Logan had finished. "Another hour out there injured in the heat, and things could have gone very differently." "Yes, sir." Henry refilled both their glasses. "You said you worked for me last year. Are you looking for work now?" "I meant what I said then. I could use someone like you permanently. I'm not getting any younger, and running this place alone is getting harder." Logan hesitated. It was a good offer, better than anything he was likely to find elsewhere. But taking it would mean staying here, seeing Molly regularly, watching her build a life that didn't include him. Could he do that? Could he torture himself that way? "Can I think about it, sir?" he asked finally. "Of course." Henry leaned back in his chair, studying Logan with shrewd eyes. "But let me ask you something. In the 2 days you rode with my niece, did you form an impression of her? What do you think of her?" It was a strange question, and Logan wasn't sure how to answer it honestly without revealing too much. "She's strong," he said carefully. "Brave. Intelligent. She's been through a lot, but she hasn't let it break her. You'll be fortunate to have her here." Henry smiled slightly. "And she's beautiful, isn't she?" Logan felt heat rise in his face. "Yes, sir, very. I thought so from the way you looked at her when you arrived. Like she was something precious you didn't want to let go of." Henry held up a hand as Logan started to protest. "I'm not criticizing, son. I'm observing. I may be old, but I still remember what it looks like when a man is falling for a woman. And if I'm not mistaken, she was looking at you the same way." "Sir, I only met her 2 days ago. I'm just grateful I could help her." "Sometimes 2 days is all it takes," Henry said quietly. "I met my wife at a barn dance, and I knew within an hour that she was the one I would marry. We had 43 years together before the fever took her, and I would have known it was her even if we'd only had an hour. When you know, you know." Logan didn't know what to say to that. He took a long drink of his whiskey, the burn of it grounding him. "I'll tell you what," Henry said after a moment. "Take a few days. Stay here at the ranch, rest up. Let me show you around the operation again. Get to know Molly properly in a normal situation without the drama of accidents and rescues. Then decide if you want to stay or move on. If you decide to stay, the job is yours with good wages and a house of your own on the property. If you decide to go, well, at least you'll go with a clear mind." It was a generous offer, and Logan found himself nodding. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Good. Now let's go see how the ladies are getting on." They found Molly in the kitchen with Rosa, looking much improved. She had bathed and changed into a clean dress that Rosa had provided, and her hair was properly pinned again. The cut on her head was properly bandaged, and though she still favored her injured leg, She was moving about helping Rosa prepare a meal despite the older woman's protests. When Molly saw Logan, her face lit up in a way that made his heart skip. "Logan, Uncle Henry said you're staying for a few days. I'm so glad." "Your uncle was kind enough to offer," Logan said, suddenly feeling awkward under Henry's knowing gaze. Dinner that evening was pleasant, though Logan felt like he was under scrutiny the whole time. Henry asked Molly about her father, about her life in Prescott, and listened with genuine interest and sympathy as she told him about her father's death and the circumstances that had led to her writing to him. "Your family, Molly," Henry said firmly. "This is your home now for as long as you want it. I'm glad you reached out to me. I've regretted the rift between your father and me for many years. I'm grateful to have the chance to know his daughter, to have family again." Molly's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Uncle Henry. I won't be a burden, I promise. I can help run the household, keep the books, anything you need." "We'll figure all that out in time," Henry said. "For now, just rest and heal." After dinner, Logan went outside, needing air and space to think. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and he stood by the corral watching Henry's horses mill about. He heard footsteps behind him and knew without looking that it was Molly. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said, coming to stand beside him at the fence. "Yes. Your uncle has a fine ranch here. You'll be happy, I think." "Logan," Molly's voice was soft. "Thank you for everything. For saving me, for bringing me here safely, for listening to me these past 2 days. You didn't have to do any of that, but you did. I'm glad I could help." They stood in silence for a moment, both of them acutely aware that something had shifted between them over their journey, that what they felt was more than just circumstance or gratitude. Logan wanted to turn to her, to tell her what he was feeling, but he couldn't. She had just lost her father, just arrived at her new home. She needed time to settle, to figure out her new life. She didn't need him complicating things. "Will you really think about Uncle Henry's job offer?" Molly asked. "Yes, I told him I would. I hope you'll stay." Molly's voice was barely above a whisper. "I would like it very much if you stayed." Logan did turn to her then, his heart pounding. In the fading light, she was beautiful, her face open and vulnerable. He could see the hope in her eyes, the same longing he felt reflected there. It would be so easy to close the distance between them, to pull her into his arms, to kiss her the way he had been imagining for 2 days. But instead, he said, "I'll think about it. I promise." Molly nodded, though he could see disappointment flicker across her face. "Good night, Logan." "Good night, Molly." He watched her walk back to the house, her slight limp a reminder of how they had met, how close she had come to being seriously hurt. The thought of it made him feel protective in a way that was almost overwhelming. She had gotten under his skin, into his heart, and he didn't know what to do about it. The next few days fell into a routine. Logan worked around the ranch during the day, helping Henry with various tasks, reacquainting himself with the operation. Henry hadn't been exaggerating about needing help. He had only 2 hired hands and they were stretched thin. The ranch could easily support double that number, but it was the evenings Logan looked forward to most. After dinner, he and Molly would take short walks around the property, her leg growing stronger each day. They talked about everything and nothing, their conversations flowing as easily as they had on the trail. Logan learned more about her dreams, her fears, the books she loved. Molly asked him about his travels, the places he had seen, the people he had met. Henry watched them with a knowing smile, but he said nothing, letting things develop naturally. On the 4th day, Henry took Logan out to look at the far pastures, ostensibly to check on some cattle. But when they were alone, he brought up what Logan knew he had been waiting to discuss. "You're in love with her," Henry said bluntly. "Don't deny it, I can see it plain as day." Logan didn't try to deny it. Yes, sir, I am. And she's in love with you too, though I'm not sure either of you has admitted it to each other yet. It's too soon, Logan protested. We barely know each other. I told you what I said about time not mattering when something is right, but you're scared. I understand that. You've been hurt before, you're worried about being hurt again. But let me tell you something, son. Life is short and unpredictable. My wife could have been taken from me at any time, and in the end, she was taken too soon. But I don't regret a single moment I spent with her. The joy was worth the eventual pain. Don't let fear rob you of happiness. What if she doesn't feel the same way? Logan asked quietly. Henry laughed. Then you're a fool. That girl looks at you like you hung the moon, but there's only one way to find out for sure. You have to tell her how you feel. And if I stay, if we try to build something together, what about her position here? I don't want to compromise her reputation. Then marry her, Henry said simply. I'd be happy to see my niece settled with a good man, and you're as good as they come, Logan Wright. You've got a good heart, a strong work ethic, and you look at her the way every woman deserves to be looked at. If you want to marry her, you have my blessing. Logan felt his breath catch. Marriage. He had thought about it constantly over the past few days, imagined a life with Molly, but he hadn't dared to truly hope it could be possible. Sir, I don't have much to offer her. Some savings, but not enough yet for my own ranch. Work for me for a few years, Henry proposed. Save your wages, prove you can manage a ranch. Then I'll sell you a parcel of my land, that valley you told me about, at a fair price. You can build your horse ranch and Molly can be close to family. It's a solution that works for everyone. It was more than Logan had dared to hope for. A job, land, a future, and possibly Molly if she would have him. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll try. The rest will work itself out. That evening, Logan asked Molly to take a walk with him after dinner. They strolled toward the creek that ran through the property, the evening air cool and pleasant after the heat of the day. Molly was quiet, as if she sensed something important was coming. At the creek, Logan stopped and turned to face her. His heart was pounding so hard he thought she must be able to hear it. Molly, I need to tell you something. She looked up at him, her green eyes wide and nervous. Yes. I know we've only known each other for less than a week. I know that in many ways we're still strangers. But I also know that in all my life, I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. When I pulled you from that wagon, when I looked into your eyes, something shifted in me. I saw you, really saw you, and I knew you were important. These past few days have only confirmed it. Logan, Molly whispered, but he pressed on, needing to get it all out. I've been running for 2 years, telling myself I was better off alone, that I didn't need anyone. But I was lying to myself. I was just scared. Scared of being hurt again, scared of wanting something and losing it. But you've made me realize that being scared is no way to live. Your father was right about that. What are you saying? Molly asked, though from the hope dawning in her eyes he thought she knew. I'm saying I'm in love with you, Molly Anderson. I know it's fast. I know it's probably crazy, but it's true. You've captured my heart completely. And I'm asking if there's any chance, any possibility that you might feel the same way. For a moment that felt like an eternity, Molly just stared at him. Then tears spilled down her cheeks and she was nodding. Yes, I feel the same way. I've been trying not to, telling myself it was just gratitude or circumstance, but it's not. I've fallen in love with you too, Logan, completely, utterly. I look at you and I see my future, everything I didn't know I was looking for. Logan let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. She clung to him, her face buried in his shoulder, and he could feel her crying, but he knew they were happy tears. I was so afraid you were going to leave, Molly said against his shirt. I was terrified that you would ride away and I would never see you again, and the thought of it was unbearable. I'm not going anywhere, Logan promised. Your uncle offered me a job and I'm going to take it. I'm going to stay here, work the ranch, save money. And Molly, if you'll have me, if it's not too soon, I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. I want to make all those dreams we talked about come true. Molly pulled back enough to look up at him, her face radiant despite the tears. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. I don't care if it's fast, I don't care what people might say. I know what I feel and I trust it. I trust you. Logan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. I'm going to spend every day making sure you never regret this decision. I'm going to love you the way you deserve to be loved, protect you, cherish you. You're going to have all the dreams you want, Molly. You can teach if you want to. We'll build a school if we have to. Whatever you want, I'll find a way to give it to you. All I want is you, Molly said simply. Everything else is just details. Then Logan did what he had been dreaming of doing since that first moment in the ravine. He lowered his head and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, but when Molly's arms went around his neck and she pressed closer, the kiss deepened, becoming a promise, a declaration, a sealing of everything they had confessed to each other. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Logan felt like his heart might burst from happiness. He had come to Arizona territory running from pain, expecting to drift forever. Instead, he had found this woman, this perfect, brave, beautiful woman who saw him, really saw him, and loved him anyway. When? Molly asked. When should we marry? As soon as possible, Logan said, and she laughed. Uncle Henry will insist on doing it properly. We'll need to post banns, let me get settled, give you time to prove you won't change your mind. I won't change my mind, Logan said firmly. But if your uncle wants us to wait a bit, I can respect that. As long as I know you're mine and I'm yours, I can be patient. They walked back to the house hand in hand, both of them almost giddy with happiness. Henry took one look at their joined hands and their glowing faces and smiled broadly. Well, it's about time, he said. I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you two in a room together to make you admit your feelings. Uncle Henry, Molly said, blushing. Logan and I, we want to marry. He's asked me and I've said yes. I hope we have your blessing. You have it gladly, Henry said, pulling his niece into a hug. Nothing would make me happier than to see you settled with a good man. He shook Logan's hand firmly. Welcome to the family, son, and welcome to the ranch permanently. They set the wedding for 6 weeks later, giving Molly time to settle into her new home and for them to get to know each other better without the drama of their first meeting coloring everything. It was a sweet time of courtship. Logan worked hard during the days, proving himself to Henry and the other ranch hands. In the evenings, he and Molly would walk and talk, slowly building the foundation of their future life together. Logan was true to his word about Molly teaching. He mentioned to some of the townspeople that Molly was a trained teacher, daughter of one of the finest educators in Prescott. Word spread, and soon parents were approaching Henry, asking if Miss Anderson might consider teaching their children. The town had been without a proper school for over a year since their last teacher had left. 3 weeks before the wedding, a delegation of town leaders came to the ranch with a proposal. They would convert an unused building on Main Street into a schoolhouse and pay Molly a modest salary if she would agree to teach. Molly's face when she accepted was radiant, and Logan felt proud that he had helped make one of her dreams come true. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect October morning with just a hint of coolness in the air. The ceremony was held at the small church in Taylor, and it seemed like the whole town turned out to see it. Logan stood at the altar in a new suit that Henry had insisted on buying him, his heart pounding as he waited for his bride. When Molly appeared at the back of the church on Henry's arm, Logan's breath caught. She wore a simple white dress that Rosa had helped her make, her dark hair adorned with wildflowers. But it was the look on her face that made Logan's eyes sting with tears. She was looking at him with such love, such joy, such certainty that this was right. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the minister asked Logan if he would take Molly as his wife, his voice was strong and sure. "I will." And when Molly pledged herself to him, her voice was equally firm. "I will." They kissed as husband and wife, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. As they walked back down the aisle together, Logan couldn't stop smiling. This woman beside him, now his wife, had changed everything. She had shown him that it was possible to love again, to hope again, to believe in dreams again. The reception was held at Henry's ranch, with food and dancing and celebration that lasted late into the night. Logan danced with his bride, held her close, and marveled at how his life had changed in such a short time. 2 months ago, he had been a lonely drifter with no direction and no hope. Now he had a wife, a job, a future, a home. Henry had built them a small house on the edge of the property, a 2-room cabin that was cozy and private. It wasn't much yet, but it was theirs, and Logan had plans to expand it as their family grew. That night, as he carried Molly over the threshold of their new home, he felt a completeness he had never experienced before. "I love you," he told her, setting her gently on her feet. "I will love you every day for the rest of my life." "And I love you," Molly said, reaching up to touch his face. "Thank you for pulling me from that wagon. Thank you for seeing me, for loving me, for giving me this life." "You saved me too," Logan said. "You showed me how to live again." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a celebration of their love and commitment. Afterward, lying in their bed with Molly curled against his side, Logan felt a peace settle over him that he had never known. He had found his place in the world, and it was here with this woman, building a life together. The months that followed were filled with work and joy. Molly started teaching at the new school, and she was a natural, beloved by her students and respected by their parents. Logan worked Henry's ranch and saved his wages religiously, planning for the day when he could buy that parcel of land and start his horse breeding operation. In the spring, Molly came to him with news that made his heart soar. She was pregnant. They would have a child by winter. Logan held her and cried, overwhelmed with gratitude for how his life had turned out. Their first child was born in December, a healthy baby boy they named Thomas, after Molly's father. Logan held his son for the first time and felt something shift in him again, a deepening of the love and commitment he felt to his family. He looked at Molly, tired but radiant in the bed, and knew he would work every day for the rest of his life to give them the best life possible. 2 years after their wedding, Logan had saved enough, combined with a generous loan from Henry, to buy the valley he had dreamed about. He spent months building a house there, a real house with multiple rooms and a porch where they could sit in the evenings. Molly was pregnant again, and Logan wanted their second child to be born in their own home. Their daughter Sarah arrived in early summer, and the little house was filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Logan started his horse breeding operation, working it around his continued partnership with Henry on the cattle ranch. Molly taught during the school year and spent her summers with the children. It was a good life, better than Logan had ever imagined possible. There were hard times, of course. The first winter in their new house was brutal, and they nearly lost some of their horses to illness. Money was sometimes tight, but through it all they had each other, and that made everything bearable. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Logan and Molly stood on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the valley. Thomas was chasing fireflies in the grass, and Sarah was asleep in her mother's arms. "You ever think about that day?" Molly asked softly. "When the wagon went over?" "Every day," Logan admitted. "I think about how easily I could have missed you, ridden a different path, arrived too late. I think about how my whole life changed in that moment when I saw you trapped there." "I think about it too," Molly said. "I think about how terrified I was, how alone I felt. And then you were there, and I looked into your eyes, and somehow I knew everything would be all right. I saw your soul in that moment, Logan. I saw the man you were, the kindness in you, the strength. And I fell in love with you right then, even though I didn't recognize it yet." Logan pulled her close, careful not to crush the sleeping baby. "I saw your soul too. I saw your courage, your resilience. I saw the woman I would love for the rest of my life. That wagon accident was the best thing that ever happened to me because it led me to you. And to this," Molly said, gesturing to their home, their land, their son playing in the grass. "Everything we've built." "Everything we'll continue to build," Logan agreed. "This is just the beginning." And it was. Over the years that followed, their family grew. 2 more children came, another boy and another girl. The horse ranch prospered, gaining a reputation for quality animals trained with patience and skill. Molly continued teaching, making a real difference in the lives of her students. Henry lived to a ripe old age, proud of the family his niece had built, grateful that his land would continue on through them. Logan never forgot where he came from, the pain that had driven him to Arizona territory in the first place. But it became a distant memory, overshadowed by the life he had built with Molly. Catherine and his brother were people from another life, their betrayal a blessing in disguise, because it had set him on the path that led to true love. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Logan would saddle a horse and ride out to the ridge where he had first heard Molly's cry for help all those years ago. He would sit there and look out over the land, at the ravine where the wagon had overturned, and feel overwhelming gratitude for that moment of fate that had brought them together. Molly sometimes rode out to meet him there, the two of them sitting side by side in companionable silence, hands linked, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. They never needed many words in those moments. They could communicate in glances and touches, in the simple comfort of being together. As the years passed and their children grew, Logan and Molly became pillars of the Taylor community. They were the couple people pointed to as an example of true love, of partnership, of building a life together through hard work and commitment. Their children grew up strong and confident, supported by parents who loved each other deeply and showed it every day. When Thomas was 18 and talking about starting his own ranch, Logan took him out to that same ridge and told him the story of how he had met Molly, how a single moment of being in the right place at the right time had changed everything. "So you're saying I should look for a woman whose wagon has overturned?" Thomas joked, and Logan laughed. "I'm saying keep your eyes open for those moments when fate is offering you something precious. Don't be so focused on your plans and your pride that you miss it when love appears in your path. And when you find the right woman, the one who makes you want to be better, who sees your soul and loves you anyway, hold on to her with everything you have." "Like you and Ma," Thomas said. "Like me and your mother," Logan agreed. "Best decision I ever made was pulling her from that wagon. Second best was admitting I loved her and asking her to marry me." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "I want what you and Ma have, that kind of love, that kind of partnership." "Then don't settle for less," Logan advised. "It's out there, son. You just have to be open to finding it." On their 25th wedding anniversary, Logan arranged a surprise for Molly. He had commissioned a local craftsman to make a beautiful carved sign for their ranch, with their names and the date they had married. But more importantly, he had finally bought her the one thing she had mentioned wanting years ago but had never asked for again, a piano. When Molly saw it sitting in their parlor, she burst into tears. "Logan, we can't afford this." "We can now," Logan said, pulling her close. "The ranch is doing well. The children are grown and helping. It's time we started spending some of what we've saved on things that bring us joy. And I want to hear you play. You mentioned once that your father had taught you, that you used to play in Prescott. I want that music in our home." Molly sat down at the piano and ran her fingers over the keys, then began to play. The music filled their home, sweet and lovely, and Logan stood behind her with his hands on her shoulders, feeling blessed beyond measure. That night, lying in bed, Molly turned to him. "Do you have any regrets? Anything you wish had been different?" Logan thought about it seriously. "Only one," he said finally. "I wish I could have pulled you from that wagon sooner so we could have had even more time together." Molly laughed and kissed him. "We have the rest of our lives still ahead of us." "And I intend to make the most of every moment," Logan promised. As they grew older together, their love only deepened. They watched their children marry and start families of their own. They became grandparents, delighting in the next generation. The horse ranch continued to thrive, now run primarily by Thomas with Logan's guidance. Molly eventually retired from teaching, but she tutored grandchildren and any child in town who needed extra help. They traveled some, seeing parts of the country they had only read about. But they always came back to their valley, to the home they had built together, to the land that had become part of their souls. On their 40th anniversary, their children threw them a grand party. The whole town came to celebrate the couple who had been such an important part of Taylor's growth and development. Speech after speech praised their love, their commitment to each other, and to the community, the example they had set. When it was Logan's turn to speak, he stood with Molly beside him, his arm around her waist, and looked out at the crowd of family and friends who had gathered. 40 years ago," he said, "I was a lonely drifter with no direction and no hope. I had given up on love, on settling down, on having a real life. I was just going through the motions, running from pain. And then one day, I heard a woman crying out for help, and everything changed." He turned to look at Molly, his eyes soft with love. "I pulled her from an overturned wagon, but the truth is, she pulled me from something much worse. She pulled me from loneliness, from bitterness, from a life half-lived. When I saw her soul that day, when our eyes met, I fell completely. And I've been falling ever since, more in love with her every single day." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Molly was crying openly, and Logan gently wiped her tears away with his thumb before continuing. "People talk about soulmates like they're something magical, something rare. But I think soulmates are made, not found. They're made through shared experiences, through supporting each other through hard times, through choosing each other every single day. Molly and I have made each other into soulmates over these 40 years. And if I had it to do all over again, I wouldn't change a single thing." The crowd erupted in applause, and Logan kissed his wife to more cheers and whistles. Later, as they danced together to music provided by some local musicians, Molly whispered in his ear, "Thank you for seeing me that day. Thank you for every day since." "Thank you for being worth seeing," Logan replied. "Thank you for making my life complete." They lived many more good years together, growing old side by side, still holding hands on the porch swing, still finding new things to talk about, still making each other laugh. Their love story became legend in Taylor, the cowboy who had pulled a woman from an overturned wagon and fallen completely in love, the life they had built together from that single moment of fate. When Logan finally passed away at the age of 82, with Molly holding his hand and their children and grandchildren gathered around, his last words were simple. "Best life I could have asked for. No regrets. Love you forever." Molly lived 3 more years without him, surrounded by family, still teaching piano to great-grandchildren, still telling stories about their early days together. When she joined Logan, she was buried beside him in the small cemetery outside Taylor, their headstone reading simply, "Logan and Molly Wright, together in life, together in eternity, a love born from a moment lasting forever." Their ranch continued on through their children and grandchildren, the Wright family becoming synonymous with quality horses and honest dealing throughout Arizona. The house Logan had built was preserved, becoming a gathering place for family celebrations and holidays. And sometimes, family members would ride out to that ridge above the ravine, would sit where Logan used to sit, and would tell the story again of how it all began. The story of how a lonely cowboy had heard a cry for help one September afternoon. How he had ridden down to find a woman trapped beneath an overturned wagon. How their eyes had met, and in that moment he had seen her soul and fallen completely. How she had seen his kindness and known she was safe. How from that one moment of crisis and rescue, a love had bloomed that lasted a lifetime and beyond, touching everyone who knew them. It was a story worth telling, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected moments, that love can find you when you least expect it, that being in the right place at the right time can change everything. It was a story of courage and kindness, of second chances and new beginnings, of building something beautiful from the wreckage of what came before. And most of all, it was a story of how 2 souls recognized each other across the chaos of an accident and held on tight, never letting go, creating a legacy of love that would inspire generations to come. It was the story of Logan and Molly Wright, a cowboy and the woman he saved, who saved him right back, and the beautiful life they built together in the wild, wide open spaces of Arizona territory, where the sky met the desert and dreams were still possible for those brave enough to reach for them.